Hello, this is Sam Pollock presenting with my team, FakeID. We're going to be showing off the WebGL beta and our progress for this milestone in our game Idle Tower Defense. So, the team again, we've got myself, Sam Pollock, as the producer.
I'm Morgan Ethier, and I am the software lead.
I'm Erik Enos, and I'm a programmer.
I'm Robert Wymer. I'm also a programmer.
And I'm Dunster, and I'm the designer.
Okay, and we're going to start off by loading up the Unity project, and I'll show the game in action, and then I'll be passing the mic to my teammates, and they'll be talking about their implementation of each of the features.
All right, so it looks like we're gonna start off with my section of the game, rather. So what I ended up implementing and working on was the menu UI system, the sound effects, and the music and whatnot. So I can't actually hear the game, so I'm not entirely sure if Sam is has the music playing or not.
It's coming through. I've just turned it off now.
So okay, if we go over to option. We'll see we do have a toggle for music and sound effects on and off. Right now the UI sound effects only work for the main menu, but it will be extended to work with the rest of the game at some point. The music does work game-wide though. So do we have the music on or off going into the demo?
Off presently.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to use this opportunity. I'll turn the music on and I'm going to run the game for a minute and then we'll go into the scripts.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we can start off the game. We play a new music track here. And here we've got the map where you can see spawners surrounding our central loop and some resources on the side. We've got the UI tracking the player's gold, their stone, and their crystal, which are 3 resources used for building and upgrading towers. And we've got the player experience, which they earn by defeating enemies, and the surge. This isn't implemented in this build, but once we're working on the longer term game, the surge is going to track the extra big waves of enemies. So to get started, you can open up the build menu. And we've got this tap and drag for using the camera. We're just going to work with the OpenGL build, or the WebGL build, with the mouse and keyboard, and it's going to work seamlessly with the tap and drag once we're shifting over to mobile. And so you open up the build menu and you can see the 3 tower options. We've got the arrow tower, the ice tower, and the cannon tower. I'm going to get started by building an arrow tower, and the spawners are inert until you build a road connecting them to the loop, at which point enemies will start spawning. So build one to this cyborg. You see the cyborg's taking damage. I can build another tower, and to give us more action to deal with, I'll build road to this zombie tower as well, or zombie spawner. So we defeated our first enemy, earned some additional gold. We'll spend this to build an ice tower, which slows down enemy movement while they're inside. Once we earn a level up, we can choose between a resource node and a monster node, which will add the associated node to the map. So you can see we've added an enemy spawner, which is over there. So if I were so inclined, I could build more road to connect this enemy spawner to get more enemies spawning onto the map. Now that enemies are bunching up, it's my chance to show off our 3rd tower type, which is a cannon tower. It fires cannonballs to the position of an enemy, and it'll deal an area of effect explosion damage to all enemies inside. Okay. So now that you've got a sense of the game running, I'm going to pass it back to Morgan, and she can talk a bit about the implementation of the UI in the scripts.
Sounds good. I'm not going to get too in-depth of the actual implementation of the UI, because if I'm not mistaken, I've actually covered that beforehand. Just a long story short, it is a single scene, and I am pretty much turning on and off canvases. Just making them visible and invisible, and having like only one canvas at the front at any given time. That way, if we did decide to do some sort of active element in the background, we wouldn't have to like splice it with another scene and that kind of thing. It was more so future proofing in that regard. But in terms of sound effects and music, so turning them off game wide, we are using a player pref for that.
Which script would you like me to look at here?
Menu UI controller.
Yeah, okay, we're still there.
Yeah. So if you scroll down slightly, you'll see. Just scroll up a bit, and there we go. So, right at the beginning, right at the start, we make sure that. So we'll get the player pref from whatever the user set last time, and have like either the music be on or off, or the sound effects be on or off, depending on what the settings were last time. And if we scroll down a bit more,
Yep.
you'll see on the right at the bottom, actually, right at the bottom. Yeah. So on toggle SFX clicked, and right above that is on toggle music clicked. In the options menu, there is a toggle button that you press it and it'll turn the sound effects on or off. It'll also change the UI to actually circle whether it is on or off as well.
Excellent.
And then whenever a music track is being played, it checks to see if the player pref is 0 or 1, and it'll play accordingly.
Okay, and should we pass it on to Eric to take a look at the initialize?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's it for me.
Let's start with the enemy spawner. So I mainly worked on road-related stuff. So the first thing you notice in the game is the spawners don't just randomly spawn. They're checking to see if there's a road tile next to them. So in both find start road and check available road. Check available road, I'm checking to see if there's a road available, obviously. And in find starting road, it's actually pulling that closest road and making it the spawn point for the spawner. In enemy controller, if we hop over there, when the enemy is spawning, we have a function called pathfinding. And basically this is looking at all the tiles from the start, and we pick an end point in the loop, and it's finding all the available tiles and creating a little bit of a line all the way to that end goal. So it's similar to how the checking road function works. So it checks in all 4 directions and it sees if it's a visited tile. If it's not a visited tile, then we're going to move to that tile. That's pretty much it for the pathfinding. It needs work. Clearly it has an end, but after it hits the end, it kind of gets a little bit confused. It will try going to the starting tile, which we don't want. We're going to have to make it so it loops eventually. In initialize, we have a map at the very top. It's a 2D array of integers, so we can visually see where the roads are. Roads being 1 and 4, 7 being monster spawner nodes. If we scroll down to start, this is looping through the 2D array. We are checking the corresponding number in the if statement, and if it's equal to 1, we're putting down a road tile. If it's equal to 0, we're putting down a regular tile, and so on. If we scroll down to add resource node and monster node, these are being used in. It's really low down there. These are being used in our leveling up script. So when we hit max EXP, we get an option to put a node down, either a monster or a resource for now. And these, when you click on them, they are being added to the 2D array, and they're also being added to a tiled 2D list, which is keeping track of all the relevant tiles. Not the ones that are just tile, but the ones that are road, monster, resource nodes. And yeah, that's pretty much that's all I did for this milestone.
Excellent. Yeah, Eric's been keeping busy. Next up, I'm going to have Alex talk a bit about the enemy controller and enemy spawner.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, so we can go to the enemy controller. So for my part of the enemy controller, we kind of worked with Erik, and then I set up a lot of the enemy prefab and the enemy spawner prefabs.
Oh, I'm going to load up one of those right now just to show off.
Yeah, for sure.
The nav mesh agent that Alex implemented and these these serialized variables to set the enemy health, enemy speed, coin reward, all the stuff that's relevant for gameplay. So as we're tuning the gameplay, we have easy access to that stuff and can test it during runtime.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so yeah, the nav mesh, enemy controller with the basic enemy behavior variables, enemy animations, yeah, take damage functions, and then the take damage function works with the game manager's inventory script. So we can, when the enemy dies, we can reward the player with the appropriate coin reward and experience point rewards. We can also slow down the enemy, which we see in the base tower behavior. When the enemy is affected by the ice tower, and we can also restore the enemy speed. And then we also have basic functions to increase the coin reward and the XP reward as the player gets later in the game. And yeah, like those basic rewards kind of don't cut it anymore. Then if we want to switch over to the enemy spawner, once again, Erik already touched on a lot of this stuff, but just spawning an enemy prefab, and then yeah, setting it up to use the nav mesh. Another thing I worked on was the audio manager, which Morgan touched on earlier. It's at the top, yeah. So here we just have an array of sounds, and each scene has an audio manager. So we just load in all the sounds that we want, and then we also have a sound script, which I think is towards the bottom. Yeah. So pretty basic. Just has a string for a name and then an audio clip, and then we can load all these sounds into our audio manager and then just play the appropriate sound when and yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I'm gonna hand it to Lucas, and he's gonna talk a bit about some continuing work with the camera in the move camera script.
Alright, so I was working on polishing and fixing up our camera drag from the last checkpoint. So what I mainly did was fixing the camera drag so that it properly moved with the touch input instead of just moving the world as long as you were holding it. So all that it does is it takes in the origin of your click, which will later be moved to touch for mobile. It takes in your mouse position and the origin of the drag, and it'll just move the camera in the direction of the drag depending on where your click origin was. And just the other thing I did was just to make sure that you couldn't drag the camera while you were in other menus that needed the mouse. I implemented a current drag bool that just and the can drag camera, so that, and it's called in toggle map camera just so that you can switch between if you want it to be draggable or not, so that the roads can function properly.
Okay. And now I'm going to talk real quick about my latest work with the tower behavior and the variations of the tower. So one of the critical things with this update was changing the way some of the tower logic worked, especially around choosing and storing targets. So now when an enemy enters, they're added to a dynamic list of enemies within range. That way the tower behaves more predictably with new enemies being added and removed, with enemies dying in the area, and it's going to give us room to fine tune that as we're working further into the design, changing the way that the towers select their priority targets, whether it's clear nearest enemy or highest health points or lowest health points remaining. All of that is going to work with this dynamic list. And then of course, there's the work with the cannonball behavior and the arrow behavior, both of which are the projectiles which store their targets, either a location or a game object, and head towards that target, and then deal damage to those enemies on impact with either an AoE or the direct damage. And then of course, there's the cold tower, which is just a radius that calls Alex's slowdown function from the enemy behavior. So now that we've taken a look at that, I'm just going to end with a quick look at our work on the Trello board, so you can visualize the way we've been sorting these tasks. And here you can see our completed list is growing pretty long, and everyone's been keeping really well on top of the stuff that they're assigned. So again, we're team FakeID, and that was our idle tower defense. It's going to be posted on our GitHub pages this evening, so you'll be able to take a look and give it a try there. Okay, thanks a lot on behalf of Team FakeID.